let's start the conversation. Let's start this conversation. Thank you. Thank you, Sir Window. Let's start this conversation. I think we are at the peak of a conversation that you're looking at the support base for dictators. And I'll read the first paragraph of it, which says that to advance their vision and to maintain social control, despots must find ways of constructing alliances to carry out their decisions, to extract resources, and to maintain their support base. In general, they rely on patron-client and patron-patron relationship. Sycophants may be employed as clients to sing praises and execute the dictats of the strong men. Hatchmen and ruthless thugs are hired to carry out disturbingly deeds such as eliminating a political rival or a dissident. For a more worthy goal, however, a direct appeal to the populace may be made. For example, to garner support for the struggle for independence, the nationalists promised to distribute the benefits of independence. They promised free education, healthcare, affordable housing, and jobs to the people. Now, strong men may also court the support of local leaders, such as chiefs, market traders, with promises of personal gain, public office, or even local development. Solidarity ties such as ethnicity, religion, or racial group are exploited to secure the support. Despots channel resources and funds to members of a particular group in exchange for the group's support and loyalty. Thus, one finds despots surrounding themselves with such kinsmen who are placed in key positions in ministries and government posts, not on the basis of qualification or merit, but for reasons of political loyalty and tribal solidarity. For example, in Saddam Hussein's Iraq, the Sunni were favored ones. When people are employed or promoted, not because of merit, but for political and ethnic reasons, efficiency suffers. Professionalism declines, and government institutions become dysfunctional. Despots make every effort to co-opt leaders of important organizations, such as Trade Union Congress. Yes.
Brother Pigeon.
Yes.
I apologies, but I've got a slight problem. When we are reading this despot, we are not really, in my opinion, we are not really doing much justice to our reading, because we read a whole long passage and we do not necessarily get to interrogate the passage as effective as. This is because we want to finish this book quickly, maybe, without really consuming the content of the context. So I would have thought, on a serious note, we read one page at the most and then start interrogating it, however long it takes, and then we transcend to the next page.
Thank you, Sister Tapua. Are you okay with that?
Because by interrogating it and sharing ideas, I think personally is when I learn better. And if I haven't read this text before reading it now, to me, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Okay,
so what I usually do to keep on par, Thank you.
Okay, let me finish this paragraph, then we can start, go back to the first one. I think it's, I haven't gone 2 pages. So let me finish this paragraph I was reading, then you can go back and start doing that. So they say that the despot makes every effort to co-opt leaders of important organizations, such as trade unions, teacher associations, student unions, and other ethnic groups to expand their support base. The result is a grand coalition of interests, religious and ethnic groups competing for access to the despot and for scarce resources from the state. The despot may play one group against another in order to maintain control. He may also cruelly punish a disloyal group in order to keep the others in line. Like Saddam Hussein during his dictatorial regime, Gaddafi has cunningly played the tribal game. He offered economic privileges to tribal loyal to him, his own Gaddafi tribe and the Wafala and the Tuhuna tribes around the Tripoli and the western part of the country. Less favors were the Zawiya, and Zentan and the Obedant tribe. So let's go back. Let's go back and look at this, whatever we are reading. I think I said that we go to this conversation because it was falling straight to what we were discussing before starting our conversation. So let's then look at this paragraph 1. So let's start with paragraph 1. Share with us what you think from that paragraph 1 alone. Let us be in context. For us to be very relevant, we need to share our thinking in context of what is written. If we go general sharing, then you lose the context. So I request that let's look at paragraph 1 and share what you think straight to paragraph 1, even if you can have references. If we make it general, then you lose also the value of looking at it deeply. So let's look at that paragraph 1 and see what you can share about that. Anybody want to go first?
Yes. This is exactly what we have been talking before you started the recording. All of a sudden, everybody wants to join the camp of President Ruto. They are not opposing him anymore because he has done the recruitment through recruiting the most influential people like Raila Odinga, through recruiting his tribesmen, and I'm sure many traditional leaders has also been recruited and they are on their side, on his side. So to say, he does not have opposition anymore. The opposition were supposed to have captured that moment when the Gen Z were at their hottest, but they were reluctant. And the Gen Z themselves, they were saying they are tribeless, they are partyless, they are whatever-less. I mean, why is it that they didn't want allegiances with other forces that are like-minded like them? Why did they want to have themselves in isolation as just Gen Zs and nothing else? And there's no revolution that does not have a head or a leader. That's a farce. So in the first place, to have claimed that they don't have a leader is a farce. And that's why it did not succeed. Because somewhere, somehow, along the line as you are going, you have to revert back to the drawing board. And that's where the head is. And that's where everything is being analyzed. And that's where new tactics are being designed. People in the streets are not the designers. They are the executors.
Oh, we've lost you.
So who was designing or who is designing this for the Gen Z? Where do they sit, even if they don't have a leader? That Congress where they sit, where is it? And why is it that state intelligence did not pick it up that these guys are a group of 10 people without a leader? They are all leaders in their own capacities. This is where they sit. This is when they sit. This is what they are planning. Why is it that the state did not pick that up? I submit.
Maybe they
there.
did.
That's how they captured them. Yes.
Now, I want to discuss, talk a bit on that issue. It's good how you put your analogy to this. One thing I'll say is that it is not true that the Gen Zs never had a leader. Because They were doing communications on when are we going to meet, what are we going to do, where, how are we going to where, when are we coming out to the parliament, when are we going to this road. The letters were coming out. Boycott this, do this. Who was generating that? That was the leader. As much as they chose either to be on shadow, there was a leader. There was a calendar on what needed to be done today and tomorrow and the rest. Where they were originating, we were not aware, majority of us, but there were people who were aware, which means there was a leader. People could not wake up every morning and just say, because we knew on Tuesday we are going back to parliament. Who communicated that? We knew on this day we are going where? Who said that? There was a leader. Leaders decided to hide, and maybe they decided to hide because of some reasons. One, they were not Gen Z, but wanted to use Gen Z. They see a criticism of coming out to be known as the leader, because maybe they could not conform with the group they wanted to lead. Second thing, maybe again, they had some of questionable reputation, therefore they could not want to expose themselves. And third thing, maybe they had their internal intention that they wanted to fulfill using the Gen Z. So when maybe you say that we did not achieve what you wanted as Gen Z, but maybe those who were giving the instructions had achieved what they wanted. And maybe that what they wanted was not what everybody knew that they wanted. So when you are going maybe, for example, in the streets and trying to bomb or to get into the parliament and cause chaos, to the Gen Zs who got in, maybe their bigger goal was maybe let's get Ruto out. But maybe the people who were giving instruction was to create chaos and anarchy so that they could be called somewhere or so that they could achieve their intention. So to me, I'm sure those who were giving those orders might have achieved their intention by that time. And therefore they stopped giving more orders, you see? But then the Gen Zs who joined the protest again, and what I will say is not discrimination. It was lack of ideological clarity. People were in the process of discussion of saying, oh, bomb parliament, do this. But what was the ideological unification clarity? So you see many young people went to the street, for example, even those who were in the parliament level, even when the guns were shot and they were sitting or sleeping on the grass, they were on TikTok saying, tap, 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 tap. Some were out there doing the recordings and whatever. Some who came out to be very popular in the protest were coming out in suits, in a tie and a suit. Tell me you're going to struggle. You know you're facing a state that is very violent. How do you go in your best suit and outfit instead of going in a combat? You're meeting people. So one thing is that, and we must be also conscious that there's what you call the fake revolution that can still also be instigated by the state. And you think that it's instigated by the people. Because there was a difference within the government. The president and his deputy were not together. And it has been alleged sometimes that the deputy was also behind the protest of the younger people. So there are a lot of things that goes on, but if you have to analyze that, you understand that there were so many mismatches. One, the false information that there was not a leader, I refuse it. Because if somebody was giving instruction on the calendar that today will be here at this time and tomorrow this time, who is that? That is a leader. It's not a matter that he must have come in public, but that was a leader. There was what was said, let's go bomb the parliament. And they made it to the parliament. They achieved what they wanted. But again, it's also a lesson that we must learn on the consciousness of revolution. How far or what is a true revolution? So young people felt that by getting into the parliament and causing chaos and the MPs went away, now they achieved something. Is that really the problem? So there's also lack of understanding of what is the true problem and how do you go through to check the truth. This was what you call popular revolutions. I can call it. It appeared more popular, even though I was part of it. On Thursdays I was there. Even on the same day I was there, but I didn't make it to the town because all roads were blocked before I went to town. They had the intelligence. But a key thing must also come out that revolution sometimes must be very organized. And it must also be around a leader. As you are saying, it must have a leader who can get the revolution. And even if the leader is knocked out, there's a leader who come up. But maybe the people who are behind this never wanted that. So there might be differences in terms of what did you want to achieve. So you thought that going in the street you were to achieve something, but somebody who was sending instruction wanted to achieve something else.
So now, brother Eugene, Brother Pigeon. That is what you have to try and determine as an aspirant presidential candidate. What was to be achieved? Because yourself makes yourself guilty of having joined this revolution that was built on a lie. It was built on a lie that it was leaderless. And if it was leaderless, why would you have wanted to join that revolution? You were supposed to have known who's the leader, go into their minds, try to read what they could be up to, and then you join, you decide to join or not to join. Now you are sitting with a mammoth task to properly analyze this uprising so that it can help you in the future. You are already a step towards achieving your goal if you analyze this thing critically, get all answers to your questions. You will be able to craft a way for a better revolution.
Yeah.
I
Savindos,
submit.
just to reply that a bit before we go back to this paragraph, is that I might also say that the revolution of June 25 might have achieved its goal. Because you see, the instructions that were coming out in the poster, they were saying reject. Look at it, how shallow it was. It might be very objective. Reject the finance bill. That was the issue. Reject the finance bill. And they say, reject this taxation. And the reason why younger people participated much on that protest is because the proposed taxation was touching much on the younger generation, including digital taxation, the non-natal taxation for the young women. And women were very many in that protest, if you realize. There was tax that was going to be a sanitary pad. There was tax that was going to be the children pampers and the baby pampers and diapers. There was tax that was going to digital trading and online whatever. There were tax that were going in various education or whatever. So the young people who participated, as far as I can say, they participated to stop a specific agenda, not to embrace or remove President Ruto. That was very simple. Let's reject this bill because if it passes, me as a young person, I'm going to be affected because of the data, the data bundles I'm using, the internet money I'm making. My child is going, I'm not going to afford this and this. So it was actually a revolution that was informed of issues. It was an issue-based revolution. But it did not go beyond analyzing why is the problem for these issues, who is the problem. So they thought that by the document, and that's what I will tell, by the documents of the propositions, of the proposals, if we bring this down, we have done and achieved our goal. And in that line, it achieved its objective because that finance bill was totally thrown out. Until that year, government never had any finance bill that was passed in the government. Those taxes were never introduced. And to the younger people, they'll tell you, and I will say, even myself who was out, that we achieved something. So there was no tax that was put on data. There was no tax that was put on baby care. There was no tax that was put on whatever. No tax that we never wanted was passed. We achieved it. And what I will say that revolution became very unifying and successful because it was an issue-based. And those issues were combining and uniting everybody else. And the goodness of an issue-based revolution is that it can keep on moving than a person-based revolution. A person-based revolution is whereby you say, okay, we are going to support Pigeon for Pigeon to be president. And people who disagree with Pigeon can walk out. But when you talk of that this tax is going to affect my transport, everybody else come out for it and they're united for that. Once they achieve it, they go out. The biggest problem, which I would say is not a failure, where we have to pick it up to an advanced level, is to make the citizens understand that who was the reason why the taxes were coming in. That is where the problem is, not even the taxes itself. So that's why we are scaling now as younger generations today. We are starting to organize in various movements of Gen Z to become the next alternative leaders. Because you realize that the problem was the leadership. How did those taxes pass in parliament until they were proposed to be effective? How did the president originate and accept such? How did my member of parliament do what and what? And that's why today, younger people have already started to come out for various positions, starting to prepare, because they understand that as much as we achieve the objective.
Brother Bijin,
yes.
Please write a 100-pager about that share and we interrogate it further.
Okay, thank you.
Because
I'll do that. Thank you.
it was
Now,
it was an
yes.
issue based. Did everybody go back home now? Now that they have achieved that,
No,
the
you
tax.
see, as a revolution, they are collateral. So some died in the process of defending what they were defending, but at least at the end of the day, whatever was they were protesting against did not pass.
Good. Now, Brother Pigeon, to go a little bit further, I'm sure one of your foremost tickets in your aspiration to get presidency will be ethnicity. You will be relying on the Kikuyu to be behind you. If that is so, will you use them again to remain in power?
I'm afraid we might be taking off this, but again, I've realized that in the revolutions we've had, there were two revolutions, if I can state in this country. The President Ruto election was a revolution. I'll tell you why. People might find it not a revolution, but it based its issues. You see what they say here, the dictators decide to divide, you see, so that they create what you call a constructing alliances. What President Ruto did, he moved to what you call a class struggle. So there was a revolution of the class. The poor class are fighting against the rich class, whom they call the dynasty. That was the revolution. And let me tell you, anybody who was poor, irrespective of their tribe, majority of them sided with President Ruto. Even for the first time, people in my community who have been opposition for long, some voted for President Ruto because he came with a narrative of the hustlers, the poor, and he tried to tell the poor, you are poor because of these rich people who have done this and this and this and this and this. And of course, he was one of the rich. But it also tells you how desperate people were ready for it and how blinded people can accept and how easy you can manipulate a tool to make it to your end as you want it. So the poor people, irrespective of where they were, irrespective of their tribe, irrespective of their age, majority of them voted President Ruto. And in fact, they came out and even celebrated, including the younger people, the lower people who just sell kale, the people who are just carrying people on motorcycles, celebrated for the win of President Ruto. That was a revolution, a very soft revolution, which is the mental revolution. Now, the June 25th revolution of last year was another revolution that was based on issue-based, finance issues and taxation. But it then created a group that is very potential here, which is called the Gen Zs or the younger generation. This group that then managed to have that revolution possible is a group that can still now be moved to a higher objective. Because if you call them young people, they don't have tribe. So there will be no young Kikuyu, young Luo, young whatever. They can come together around their age issue. The same way the poor people came together around their poverty issues. And if they come together around their age issues, and that is used properly, but not only to actually take advantage over them, but now to allow them to be the leaders to push for what they want, is a very possible revolution. But if you move away from that narrative and move to the tribal card, I'm telling you, you might fall in the same old tactics that the old people have been making. And it's very hard sometimes to succeed in that because there are people now who have taken tribal patronage for long. And even if you stand with them, the tribe will respect them than yourself. But if you take advantage of the revolution within this class of people who already came out and tested the struggle and the pain of a revolution, if you use it well to steer it towards the right direction with a properly informed issue base, because this generation is also informed, is also around the issue things. They're not around too much of the tribal. They come out for issues and they know how to analyze critically and examine if that can be proper. And that's why what is happening today in the younger generation is that the older generation have realized that these young people are going to be the potential weapon in the next election. So there have been coming candidates who are over 70 years, 60 years saying, I am a Gen Z. I understand the Gen Z problem. I'm ready to liberate the youth. The 50 years are coming. Everybody's moving in this narrative. And President Ruto is also doing his best to ensure that he distracts this generation and this youth gap so that they can have various leaders coming out. So this leader might come out, this leader might come out, so that they don't move together. Because if they unite, and that's what everybody else knows, if this generation unites under any person, that person will pass, irrespective of the tribe they come from. So that is also a potential thing that now we need to analyze and gamble with, but properly analyze it and see how we can take advantage over it. That's what I can say on this. But let's get back to the
Brother PK,
Yes.
my apologies. Before
Yes.
you go back, sorry, Sister Tapua.
It's all right.
Will I be wrong if I say the tone of President Ruto before the uprising was slightly different from his usual tone? That he was on the verge of speaking the language of Pan-Africanism, the language of the Traores of today. That's what I heard him that's what I read in him between the lines. And if I'm not wrong in that, yes, go ahead.
No, just finish your second part. Finish your second part so that I can come then properly.
I to say, if I'm not wrong in that analysis, then the powers that has put him in power just wanted to shake him up, to bring him back to his old tone. And that's why they have manufactured the Gen Z uprising. Think about it.
Now, when I analyze that, is that one, I was one of the few people who criticized initially when Ruto moved to Pan-African narrative. Because a politician who has been in politics for 30 years with no record of Pan-African struggle or Pan-African agitation, a person who becomes a deputy president for 10 years without advancing any Pan-African agenda, including even single passport and whatever, then becomes a president and starts speaking Pan-Africanism, is not something you can trust. It's not a true Pan-African. And I knew it before. I think what happened is that when Ruto came to power, there was a potential that he was, and there was a rumors across the country, and people knew that he was instilled to be a president by the West. The West worked on his favor in a discussion and a dialogue with Raila Odinga to allow Ruto to be the president, and manipulated results and so many things that went on. But now, for him to be relevant, to be accepted in the society, they instructed him to speak the language of the society and the Africans, and that is Pan-Africanism, so that Africans could see, okay, now that is a progressive leader. He's not a puppet of the West. So when he was speaking Pan-Africanism at the start, was to ensure that he gained what he called the resemblance and acceptance of the Africans and Pan-Africans, irrespective of his ways up there being actually Western instigated. Because if he was not to speak that, people could have started to analyze how did he come in. But we knew in the Kenya how he came in, and we were analyzing that. But when he spoke the language, he became relevant to the Pan-Africans so that he could also gain credit locally. So people will say, our leaders are strong leaders. See, even he went out there, spoke in South Africa, and members of parliament stood up and gave him standing ovation. He went in the West and spoke. People respected him. So it was gaining relevance, and this was a tactics of those who put him in so that he became relevant. You see? And therefore, as it moves along, we must analyze that. The people who made him be where he is knows that he is for their purpose. That's why he talk of de-dollarization, change again. He talks of Niger, he talk about Haiti, change again. It tells you clearly somebody who lacks common character. Because if you have your principles and your character, people can tell it. Even if you compromise, people can say maybe you're compromising out of necessity, but they can tell who you are. That was just to gain relevance at the beginning, so that the people could accept him and African could accept him. And I think it was also strategic, so that when he gained the African trust of being a Pan-African, he positioned himself to be the main agent of the West in the continent, so that he could be used now to start manipulating the continental agenda. And up to date, he's still having that responsibility. That's why you see all head of commander-in-chiefs of all, or the senior defense forces of all Africa countries who are coming to Kenya for meetings. And many of the meetings of the African continent have been taking place in Kenya. He's centrally put in place to ensure that he advances the interests of the West, but silently, so that you don't really see, so that he can move forward. But let me allow Sister Tapua to share something before we move out. Sister Tapua.
I think I'll pass. Thank you.
Brother
Sister
PK.
Tapua, what did you say?
I said I'll pass for now. Thank you. I'm enjoying the discussion.
Okay, welcome. Sir Windhoek?
Yes, the trade unions in the trade unions in Kenya in general, before the uprising, where were they? Were they on the side of Ruto? And where are they now?
Now, the trade union in Kenya has been run by one person called Francis Atwoli. Go online and check that man called Francis Atwoli. He has been the Secretary General of the trade union since 1990. He's been the trade union leader for the last 30 years.
Whoa.
Unfortunately, he is also, I think, a vice chairperson of ILO, International Labour Organization. So he also has a position in the international level. He has never been removed from his position due to sometimes he tried to silence the dissenting voices. Now, funny thing, he has never failed to work with any government. So every time as a leader of the union, he has always sided with the government. And some people would say it's tactical because maybe for the workers to survive, you have to accept the government. But there's no return to the workers as even if it's the government. So he was with the opposition leader before election, immediately before election. He campaigned for the opposition. In fact, he even made a quote that the president should prepare to hang himself, William Ruto. He should prepare to hang himself in his home village because he's going to be defeated thoroughly. That's what he said when he was campaigning for the opposition. Immediately, the president got in. He was the first person to go to State House. And he said he has come to support the government. And that the workers are coming to work with the government. None of even any increment has never been made by the government in terms of the salaries of the workers. Initially, in the previous regime, at least during the Labor Day, the president could make a 10%, 2% increment in the salary, 3% increment in the salary. In his regime, and this President Ruto regime, none of the increment has been made in workers' salary. There has been deduction in workers' welfare, including a forcible deduction in housing levy, a deduction in the NSSF, the retirement equity. There has been serious oppression of the workers. And that's why even the civil servants in government are not happy with the government. But the trade union leader is always a quiet mouth of the government, a billionaire who dash money all over and sing and dance all over. He sings and dances rumba and moves anywhere else, but he's a very illiterate person as well. That is him.
You see, that's why I asked the question. You will not take President Ruto out of power because he has done everything that a despot is supposed to have. Trade unions on his side, ethnic groups on his side, Gen Zs on his side, opposition parties on his side. Who is there to oppose him? No one. Absolutely no one. So you must wait until his term finished. And I disagree that the election of Ruto was a revolution. It wasn't a revolution. He just canvassed on issues that he knew were pressing. And he ran away with that. It was not a revolution.
No, Windhoek, a revolution must not be violent. Not that any revolution must be a violent revolution. Some revolutions are mental.
Why are you saying
a revolution?
No, let me tell you why I'm saying that.
A revolution is a complete turnaround of the current status quo.
No, let me tell you that. The reason why I'm saying that, Bob Marley said, emancipate your mind from mental slavery. Steve Biko said, the mind is the greatest weapon in the hand of the oppressor. Chancellor Williams says, irrespective of us getting freedom and so-called independence, we remain enslaved mentally. And that was voluntary, what Chancellor Williams said. Now, sometimes when people change their minds, sometimes when the people liberate their mind in terms of their thinking, they make changes in terms of the decisions they make. Because every decision you make is a thought process that goes up in your mind first. Any talk you make must be internalized in your mind first. So sometimes people go violence, like what we went in the independence. Sometimes people went in the forest and shoot and kill. Sometimes, look, for example, what happened in Burkina Faso. There was no war, there was no bloodshed. It's the mind of the soldiers who have been emancipated that end up taking action without killing anybody or shooting anybody. Look at what Sankara did. He changed the system not because he had the gun and shoot somebody. The moment their mind was changed and the moment their mind was liberated, they knew what is necessary for a country and they went for it. So sometimes
So what did Ruto
Yes.
change?
Now, what Ruto did, Ruto used the mind of the poor. Let me tell you, the mind of the poor. You see this? The poor, for a long period of time, they were voting on a tribal line in my country, the poor. So irrespective of how poor you are, as long as the president candidate is from your community, you don't care. You're going to vote him because he's your community person. So whether he's going to eat, or whether you have nothing, or whether you sleep angry, you don't care. But when he realized that the poor need to now be, he used the mind of the poor to tell the poor that now you the poor. You are poor because they are rich people, irrespective of where they are from, irrespective of them being your cousins or your uncle or your trustmates. They are the people who are making you poor. And therefore, we must apply together to ensure that we bring them down, the poor. I'm telling you, he was a wrong candidate to lead that conversation because he was not. But what it happens to the mind of the people, it revolutionized their mind and thought for the first time beyond their time. For the first time, I'm telling you, in my community, people have never voted out of Raila Odinga for the last 30 years. Some of them even had the guts to stand and say, I'm not voting Raila Odinga, irrespective of him being my tribe. And that is a poor man in my community. For the first time, people from President Uhuru, who was the former president, the Kikuyu community, and the former president was from Kikuyu, who was campaigning for Raila Odinga to be the president. His people from his community rejected him as a sitting president and said they're not going to listen to his choice. So in the mind of the people changed their mind to go against the order. The problem is the person who was leading that was part of the order they are trying to distract. But in terms of the voting on how they did it, I'll say it was for the first time their mind went beyond their tribe or listening to so-called tribal cocoon or tribal leader or a kingpin and voted contrary to what the tribal leaders have been telling them. That happened. Whether Ruto became a puppet, because Ruto was, of course, part of the system. And I'm saying that was caused by what you call desperation. You know, when people are desperate for a change, their mind is clouded to make right judgment. And that is the mistake we have realized several times. Look, for example, and I'm not good in what happened in Zimbabwe, but look, for example, people were saying that Mugabe is wrong. And they had issues and reasons why Mugabe is wrong. But because their mind is now clouded with some emotions that are trying to do whatever, now they become vulnerable. And fake people or fake revolutionaries take advantage of that to use that mental change that is starting to rise up and use them to their own advantage. This has happened several times, and that's what Ruto did. He captured the mind and took advantage. And that's why I was in the protest of that election. I was a contestant in 2022 election, and I said it in many public outrage that because the ground was ready for the poor, and I was one of the poor person in that process, if I was to make it to the ballot, it could have been different. Yes.
Brother Pigeon, even though President Ruto has appealed to the poor, how was he going to change the system to benefit the poor? That is what the revolution does, is to change a system. It's to change a system so that it can yield different results. What did he say? Was he going to nationalize national resources? Was he going to change the governance system from a unitary state to a federal state? What did he say was he going to do? Apart from delivering what he was supposed to deliver as any other president. Increasing social grants, increasing, cutting on taxes, and all these. These are operational matters, are not revolutionary matters.
Now, Sawindok, I believe revolution has stages. And of course, for you to have a complete revolution, you must go through the all stages to analyze it.
Yes.
One, there are people who believe that the end justifies the means. And many revolutionaries say we don't care the means, we care the result. And
the means, the means justifies the end.
Now, there are people who say the end justify the means. Those are two different school of thought. Now, the reason why I want to come to the end justify the means is that there are people who analyze revolution in terms of its end result. And that's where you're coming from, Brother Widok and Sister Kapua.
Yes.
You are trying to understand revolution from the end product, not from the means.
Yeah,
now,
but means
I'm trying,
revolution.
no, I'm trying to analyze the means as part of the revolution, not the end, but the means also being part of the revolution. Now, what I say is that they are what we call counter-revolution or fake revolution, but they still have the name revolution. Have you ever heard of counter-revolution?
Yes.
Very much.
The name is still revolution, but it's a counter. Are you understanding that? Because in the process of what went in the means of getting President Ruto, the means, how he got in, I would say it was a revolution in the mind of the people on how they ended up voting him in. Because in fact, he wasn't fit enough.
Now,
all the candidates.
now we have a name for it. Now we have a name for it. It's not a revolution. It's a pseudo-revolution.
Yes.
Now you
It's
see
a
we say the
false
word revolution.
It's a false
Now what I'm
revolution.
telling you, it is false because the end do not speak to the means. That's what makes it false. But
Yes.
it has the element of revolution in the process. The reason why it takes the element of, you cannot take away the element of revolution in it, is the process it undergoes is a revolutionary process. But the end is not a justified end of a revolution. It's a counter and a fake end. That's why you call it a false, fake, or counter revolution. Are we together? So I'm saying,
No.
Okay, Sister Tapua?
No, I think we're mixing two things here. We're beginning to use revolution in two meanings. Because the revolutionary process does not make a revolution. Like Sewinduk says, you can go through a process that appears revolutionary, but does not result in revolution. Therefore, it's not a revolution.
We are just
Sister Tapua,
abusing.
No, Sister Tapua, you're taking us back to our reading in consciousness. Sawindok,
Yes.
in our reading of consciousness, revolution is defined as following: is the contest, no, it is a fight against the old and the contest for a new. Now, if you analyze it in that situation, actually, it was the Kenyan situation was not a contest against the old. Because Ruto, who was leading the contest, was not a new, he was part of the old. Are we together there?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The fact that he had not become a president, or he has not climbed to the higher level of presidency to say that he has been an old president, did not exempt him from being part of the old, because he has benefited in the process of that system, whatever you call old system you want to remove. He's been part of it.
Yes.
Now, in the race, there was a contest between President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is a president, and his father was a president, who could be seen as an old system. Raila Odinga, who has been an opposition leader and his father is opposition, who could be viewed also as an old system. I think that's where the mind was now reading from the aspect of people analyzing it. Then there was William Ruto, who has never been a president, has never been opposition leader, but he has been a deputy president. Now, in the context of the three, the president, the opposition leader, and William Ruto was a deputy president, people could see that Ruto is a new person to the power than being part of the power process. That was false. I'm not saying I accept it. That was false. And that is where they missed the revolution. Do you know why? Because they tried now to, like saying, okay, because your father is wrong, your child can be good. But your child is part of the family. So how can be my father have a wrong character and you want to exempt the child from the character of the family? As the same way we were saying, how can this activity take place in Kenya and you want to exempt Ruto from being responsible? You see? So the people missed it. But again, let me ask you, if they were presented that option between a former president, whose father was a president, a former opposition leader, whose father has been an opposition leader, and a deputy president who has not been in that former for those years or president, do you think what could they prefer to? Now,
You see,
But
for me, everybody that has served in an old dispensation and did not do anything to challenge that dispensation is part of the old. If you were a minister of labor and a minister of health or a minister of what, and you were happy with that system, you are just part of the old. You were supposed to have shown your traits already that here where I am is not how things are supposed to be. And if you were quiet for convenience, and now because you were earning a salary, now that you know your 5 years have come to an end, it's the time that you want to stand up and say, yeah, but he was not right there and he did not do this. You are just an opportunist and you are part of the old. End of story.
Now, Sawindok, that is a very important lesson that we are analyzing. Because, you know, we are using Kenyan situation as an analysis of a revolution, what we call a fake thing. And I think that lesson you're saying, Sawindok, is what I've been telling people. Because we are failing to learn. You know why we are failing to learn? And I'm telling you, if you look at majority of people who have presented themselves to be president in this next election.
Before you proceed, Brother PJ, like my current president, she has been in cabinet for 35 years, and she was never a Pan-Africanist. She was never a revolutionary. She was never a socialist. Today, she's the biggest socialist and revolutionary. Where did it come from? She's looking for, or she's seeking for relevance. Go ahead.
That is it. That is it. So what I'm saying, what sometimes we lack to learn is that we failed to understand that anybody who is part of a system. No, we also fail in our revolutionary goals that we have used our revolution to fight against persons or people. For example, you are fighting President Ruto. Without fighting the system, the revolution is about the system, not the person. The system.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Now we agree.
Now the person is a product of a system. Now, because people or revolutionaries have not understand the limit or the level of their target, they always fight the person. And every election in the continent has been only changing the person. And you think that you're doing something substantial for our country. So I change Mugabe to Mnangagwa, I change Ruto to Uhuru or to Raila, and you celebrate.
Exactly. That's not a revolution.
Right, which is why we cannot say Ruto's election was a revolution.
Yes.
Because it's not the person. Because he's maintained
we
the
did not change the
system. Now, Sister Tapua, as a teacher, from the psychology of a child,
yes,
if you can be able to change the psychology of a student to behave in another way, have you attained some level of revolutionizing the mind of the child?
No, not in the sense of what we're talking about. Because if you're revolutionizing the mind, it means you're coming up with a new product of the mind, and it's not possible.
Now, Sister Tapua, I want you to look at it in this context. I am, for example, a Luo.
Well, Brother Pigeon, take this one. Take this one. My president has announced that education is free from elementary to wherever. But it's free for which system? Where do you need to start? You need to start with a system. So that it can suit your needs.
We have accepted that the system is a key goal here. And that's why, politicians like myself or any other politicians are used to what you call popular talks or popularity. In fact, politics is about popularity and popular. So people talk what is popular so that the citizens will say, yes, if I elect so and so, I'm going to get free education. No, that is popular talk. And the danger of some revolutionaries is if you become a popular, if you talk popular talk, you might end up suffering from the same popular talk if you don't implement them. I think that. And then you get the people ganging against you. But let me take back the analysis I wanted to give to Sister Tapua. Now, as a citizen, there are two levels of people here. There's a citizen and there's a leader. Now, as a citizen who has been thinking in my tribal line of voting ever since I was born, I know that I will always vote my tribe mate on the ballot. And my generation have always been doing that. Every election we go to, it has always been, we just calculate the numbers. How many laws do you have? How many Kikuyus do you have? If you match this plus this, is equal to this. That has been the calculation in every part of the continent where election goes on. Majority, apart from Tanzania, majority of the countries depend on calculating the votes of the community. In fact, they assume that the community thinks the same way. So because the Kikuyus are majority, now you assume you're going to be automatic president. You assume that the community thinks just like that. That is something that has been either been indoctrinated or practiced for a period of time. Now, when these citizens from this community fail to behave as you think, which means he fails to act as he has been acting all along, because every day he stand at the door, maybe open the door, and then stand out there every day. But this day, over 30 years, he never opened the door and stand. Instead, he opened the door, walked out, did something and came back. What I'm saying is that for the first time, my Luo community failed to vote for many of them failed to vote for their candidate. They voted 4 times in the ballot. For the first time, some of them. For the first time, the Kikuyu community failed to listen to their president and their person of their tribe to vote in the line of their tribe leader, whom they voted initially and refused to vote for. Now, if you look at the psychology of that citizen, leave alone the leader, there's something that has happened in their mind. There's some change in terms of how they are making now decisions, them as a citizen. Now, the problem is, and that's what I'm saying, the problem is the person they are following, the leader. Now, the leader, who then happened to be a Ruto, is somebody else to examine. Himself was not a revolutionary. The leader was not a revolutionary. The citizen's mind might have been revolutionary, but the leader was not a revolutionary. So the two things were not matching. So the leader took advantage of a mind that is changed for his own interest. So there was no revolutionary leadership that took place.
Right. Therefore, the conclusion should be it wasn't revolutionary.
Yes.
Because the leader failed to take advantage of it.
But he could not even satisfy that interest in the first place, Mr. Tapua. And we have said there's no way we can expect somebody of the system to fight the system.
Yes, therefore it was not a revolution.
Simple.
What was it?
It was a continuation of the system with a different lie of delivery.
Yes.
Now let's pick the lesson from there, because I think now there's a lesson we have to learn from there. And I think this is a message that must go to the
lesson you have to learn from this, Brother Pigeon, is you are on the doorstep of victory. Make use of this false narrative that has been advanced. Analyze this revolution, so-called pseudo-revolution. Write a 100-pager, give it to Sister Tapua. She will make inputs and you will win the next presidential elections.
No, thank you, Sir Windhoek. I'm not analyzing this, in fact, for my interest of leadership or presidency, but there's a lesson that must go out for the citizens to be educated and to learn. And that lesson must come from us who are studying and analyzing revolution. Because you see, to many people, even the definition of a revolution to them is something else. You see? They forget that there's this element of a mental revolution that do not mean arms, but that mental revolution can also refer to damage in a society. For example, when the minds of the citizens change, they vote a problem, and that resulted to them suffering. I think that. And today, there are people, second lesson is that anybody who has been part of the system, as Windhoek has also put it, can never fight the same system. Today, 70 to 80% of the candidates who have already declared themselves to be going against Ruto. And in fact, the popular one, who the citizens are now even thinking that are the best alternatives, have been part of the system, which means it is possible again for the same thing to happen. Ruto might be out, but the same crop of the same system coming in. And people will think it's a revolution because we removed Ruto.
Prove them wrong. Prove them wrong, they are wrong. And win the elections.
But again, Pawindok, now let's look at the analysis. It said here that the dictator surrounds himself with what? He surrounds himself with sycophants, and he employed dictators, people think for him. He eliminates political rivals, and he actually do what he call a relevance. So he distributes resources in terms of education to the people. Look, for example, I'll tell you an example. You see President Ruto recently. Let's look at this in this text of paragraph 1. When Raila Odinga joined Ruto after the Gen Z protest, do you know what has happened? The first thing, the people from my community and this community, Raila Odinga, which is the same community, have been appointed to government. Ministers in top positions, Treasury, Energy, and Attorney General. I think that. Now, what has this created in other tribes? People think in a tribal line. What it has created is that other tribal members are saying this, that, oh, you see Raila Odinga joined the government and his community got some position in government. So why are you, the leader of my community, not joining? So that you also need the position to be in government. That's the first thing you have managed to do. The second thing, started now to allocate projects. So my county, my home county or state where I'm born, for the first time, hosted a holiday and is going to host another event. My people from my county slept at the stadium waiting for the holiday the next day. They slept at night waiting for the holiday to take place the next week. For the first time, because they are saying they're not in the government because they're opposition leaders in the government. They slept in the field waiting for a holiday with nothing. They were given now some projects. A road was open, a water project was open, some money was given for an hospital, and some money went for a college. Now the community say, see how we have benefited. Now the president is using his power to start distributing resources as is being listed here, so that it can win the support of that community. And what it does for the community, every community will want to join so that they are part of the government and eat together and maybe say that they are benefiting because there are small tokens of projects that will be thrown to them. This is what you are reading here.
Pigeon, can you scroll down to the second of solidarity ties?
Brother Pigeon, while you are there.
Right. It says there, solidarity ties, such as ethnicity, religion, or racial group, are exploited to secure support. That's what you're talking about. Despots channel resources and funds to members of a particular group in exchange for the group's support and loyalty. Thus, one finds despots surrounding themselves with such kinsmen who are placed in key positions in ministries and government posts, not on the basis of qualification or merit, but for reasons of political loyalty and tribal solidarity. So that's what we have there. So instead of giving an example, we could just say Ruto.
Tatapu, are you there?
Yeah, I yield.
So, Brother Pigeon.
We didn't hear what you're finishing in.
Okay, no, I was saying.
We didn't hear your last line.
Yeah, instead of giving the example of Saddam Hussein there, we could give the example of what you just said about Ruto and your group.
And you finish it to the last part. It says, now when people are employed or promoted, not because of merit, but for political and ethnic reasons, efficiency suffer, professionalism declines, and government institutions become dysfunctional. That is what we are witnessing today in Kenya.
Yes, absolutely.
The bottom line is, the bottom line is the same tactics that are used by despots to remain in power is the same tactic that you should use to capture power. You have to make sure that
you have the ability. Do you have the ability to promise local things? Do you have the ability to? Do you have the tools to coerce these groups to cooperate? Do you have the tools?
You don't need to coerce them. You have to workshop their minds. The only tool that you have is to workshop their minds so that they can be on the same wavelength as you. And that's where you need to transform the system. This is what you have to feed them. I'm going to transform the system in order for it to yield this. No more raw materials out of the country. No more mines in the hands of foreigners and this and that. And you as traditional... Come again? Sorry.
I wanted to say exactly what Trump did. Trump promised people and made promises that he couldn't fulfill, because he was talking about getting back to mining coal in his first election and draining the swamp and so on. So that got people's minds jogged, and they thought, oh, he's here to change everything for us.
So there you have it, Brother Pigeon.
No, but that is a dangerous way.
And once you get there, you get in charge of the instruments of coercion that you didn't have, if you like. It's dog eat dog.
This has been a this has been a very intense conversation.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Don't quote me.
No, it has been an intense conversation. It has been intense conversation for the first time, but I think we were trying to analyze, we were trying to put this book into context, into the current contemporary situation. We are trying to understand the current context in line with what was written here. And what you've said and then is very important, because now we are learning here. Here we are still learning the tools of despotic regimes. So how they run their affairs. This is what you are learning in the past. So their support base. So we are trying to understand where do they get their support base. And what is very clear is from what Sawidok is saying, any revolutionary must go straight to the support base and destabilize this support base to transfer to his side or her side. You must go to the same support base, you see?
Yes.
So that you can be able to destabilize the root of the support.
Yes. Can we go to the third?
Let's allow other members to come in. Yeah, I want to allow some other members who are here to contribute as we move to the third paragraph. So Gero Anunnaki and Brother The King, can you share something? I know you found us in the middle of
conversation. So greetings.
Yeah, greetings.
So for me, if you want to change a system, and we are going to use the same tactics the imperialists or some of our leadership politicians have used, the people will not see the difference between you and them, and the previous system. And one thing also is our people are also used to these same tactics all the time. That for them to embrace something new also becomes another situation. For instance, our people are used to spending money, buying rice, or maybe giving them a handout at the end of the day for them to go and vote for the politician. How do you get them to really understand and know for real that the situation they find themselves in, they are really the one who have to take that decision to drive that change, and not the politician, that they must vote based on the change they really want and not based on their bread and butter? How do we do that without really going through this same system again? So it's like, no matter how hard we try, the gun has to be used anyway. Or somebody like Traore, could it have to take place, seize the power, and then gradually drive them towards what they really want? For me, I don't see any way out aside that.
I have gone a bit to quote this, but there's something I wanted to quote in this move that is relevant a bit. But here, where I've quoted, what is important, they say that the third sentence, a new way of thinking or a different approach is imperative. Leave the rest of the things. But that element alone of a new way of thinking or a different approach is imperative. That's what I wanted to look at a bit. But there's something else I wanted to say. There's in this book where it is said that you need to attack their weakest side. You don't attack somebody on their strongest side. So you attack somebody on their weakest side. So let me go back to the book. I wanted to quote something there.
All right.
General Minaki, as I'm going back to the General Minaki.
The part that you highlighted in yellow, please.
No, where I've come from.
Yes, you highlighted a section in yellow.
Yeah, I was going back there. That's what I was trying to refer to. Let me go back to it. I was just giving it as a reference. It was a reference, Sister Tapua, but if you like to look at it, it's okay. This one. This is where it was our initial reading.
Mm-hmm.
You want to say something about it? Go ahead.
No, you've moved it again. There's something I want to have a look at.
This one.
Yeah. No, I think pass. I'm not organized enough. Let's pass.
Okay. So let me get to the paragraph 3 that you want to talk about. Is that okay?
Yes.
But again, Sister Tapua, in line with that, I'm trying just to pick again, there's also what we talked about here, that there's also lack of organization within the opposing forces. These are things we read sometimes, but we might be forgetting about them. But again,
please, the yellow.
Yeah?
Yeah, where's the yellow bit? You keep moving away from the yellow bit.
You want me to go back to the yellow?
Yes, please. Because there's something really important there.
Okay. This is back to what we read before. So I think it's good for reference again for this context. It's okay. Here.
You highlighted the yellow bit that I was just reading just now. There. Right. It says there, a new way of thinking or a different approach is imperative. Leave the dictators alone for now. They're stone deaf and impervious to reason. Railing daily about the abuses of human rights, acts of brutality and violence will not alone bring about change. It is time to think about the other side, the opposite, the pro-democracy activists and reformers. That is the focus of this book. I think we need to be reminded by that statement, particularly in Zimbabwe, where people on a daily basis are pointing out the human rights abuses, the things that our leaders are doing and so on. And they're stone deaf. They don't even hear a thing. And you start to wonder, what planet are they on? So I think this is really important, really, really important.
Yeah, thank you for finding some work in it, because I thought there was something important there.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also looking, not even that, as we try to go back, there's also something I was trying to look at. Look at this one. When they say this paragraph that I've highlighted here again, look at it, what it says. It says that, however, a force is able to dominate because the counterforce is either non-existent or weak. Understand that? That's what I've prevailed for decades, because the opposition forces are weak, crumbling. So it's high level of waking up the weak forces, the opposition forces, so that together they can form some unity to counter. You see what we learn in our consciousness, that is about dialectics. So the negative forces will always outweigh the positive forces.
Yes.
But if the positive forces come together, it's just balancing the beam. There's no day you can finish something completely.
Mm-hmm. But what we've noticed in Zimbabwe is that.
But look again at this. Look again at.
What we've noticed in Zimbabwe is, right. What we've noticed in Zimbabwe is the ruling political party now has the art of weakening any opposition. They will infiltrate and do the incredible things. You know, it's incredible how at the formation of a party, they have someone planted in there who will take over and spoil things just like that. And you realize, oh, we've been captured again. Oh.
Now look at this paragraph I've also highlighted. I think I had to go back. This paragraph is talking about chapter 4, which we are now reading. It says, on the battlefield, one must know the enemy. One must know the enemy. One must know his strength. One must know his weakness. And one must know his tactics. Now that is what we call the modus operandi of the despotic regime. The one now we are reading in chapter 4. Now it says, like a table, a despotic regime has legs. It has props or have support. For despotic regime, these supports are both external and internal. One does not fight a regime by climbing on top of the table to fight it where it is its strongest. Instead, one identifies its props and systematically severely severs them. The law of gravity then takes care of the rest. Are you seeing that? I think there's also a very important message there.
Yes. And I think the dominating parties also use that. You know, they don't fight the opposition on the table. They just undermine it systematically.
But again, let's look at chapter 5. Sorry for taking you back to this reading. I think they were introduction to this book. It says, the next paragraph, a despotic regime does not last forever. It violates the natural order of things and eventually collapses under the weight of its own internal contradiction. So the things like insecurity often plagues the despotic regime, and palace intrigues or even lead to despotic to start suspecting plots by everyone or even their own military. You may create layers upon layers of security just in case one layer fails. In the end, however, it may be hosted by his own pattern, overthrown or killed by members of his own security apparatus. Now, this is also very important to learn there. I'm just trying to highlight some of the things we did before for us to be in context with what you are reading today. But you feel free to come in case you want to point to something. There's something I wanted to. Now, this one is also what I wanted to talk about. Now, we are here at the stage of toppling a dictator. But this paragraph is also very important to put into context to our conversation. It says that toppling a dictator, however, is only the first step. It does not necessarily establish a freedom or prosperity. Many countries have experienced what they call revolution reversals of a revolution. A dictator is toppled only to be replaced by another tyrant. As Africans are fond to say, we struggle very hard to remove one cockroach from power, and the next rat comes in to do the same thing. So I think these paragraphs are very important. And that's what will happen in Kenya. So when people say that we remove the dynasty just to end up with the same so-called Soruto here, same thing. You see? But yes, we are having 15 minutes to go. So members, feel free to come in to share your general thoughts on this. I'll be going back to the paragraph, but I think some of these things we read before were now very important to be tied to what we are doing now.
Yes.
Anybody want to say something? Feel free to come in as we are trying to discuss this. Anybody? General Nunaki, Sawindok, anybody else? Wow, did people disappear? Sawindok, are you not around?
I'm sleeping.
No, I went back. Sorry for that. I went back to pick some other few things that I thought would help us so far. I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
more of these things.
I'm here 100%.
So any general conversation on this? I think what I pick is that thing we say that we must learn the tactics, the weaknesses, and the strength of a despot. That is very important to me. Because, like, for example, let's analyze Ruto today. What are his strengths? He has the state apparatus. He has the so-called tribal kingpins. He's having even the church by his side. He's having the police. All those state apparatus of coercion, including the parliament, the judiciary, are all by his side. What is his weakness? And I say one of his weaknesses is his reputation, his character. And one of the reputation that is a taint weakness to him is the killing of the younger people during the June 25. That one is something that the younger people, as much as some few can be bought to forget, but majority of younger people cannot forgive on that. He has already committed one weakness. The second weakness he has is very tribal. So he has appointed majority of his tribesmen in all positions, which means you can take advantage of that to show how weak he is. Because you say in his government, he only appointed his tribesmen. That's another weakness he's having, you see? But another bigger weakness he's having is his political life. If people have been gauging all his promises, and
Brother
if they
Pigeon.
analyze his promises, they find some lies in it.
Brother Pigeon,
Yes.
sorry to interject. But that's what everybody else is doing, surrounding himself with cronies. So that is a
But do you
weakness.
think that's a weakness?
That is a weakness that is known all over around the world, and it is accepted as such. That's how presidents act, basically.
But
So,
again,
to count that as a weakness, I don't think it's going to help much, because here you are dealing with masses that are basically not well educated to be able to factor that in. And if I can come up as President to Ruto today and say, look at Cyril Ramaphosa, this is what he's doing. Look at Netumbo Naidra, that is what he's doing. Look at Traore, that is what he's doing. That is what every president is supposed to do. So those illiterate masses will take it, yes, it is what it is. The biggest weakness that you should hammer on today is the degree of delivery of what he has promised. And he could not have delivered better than all his predecessors put together, because he has not revamped the system. So look at what he promised predominantly to deliver. Yes, go ahead.
Sister Sapo come in first. I thought Sister Sapo wanted to come in a bit.
No, not at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, Window, it is a strength on its side, but it's a weakness on our side. For example, majority of the people in my country are not happy how some fools around the president, for example, his close PA, his close personal aide, called Farouk, how he lecture people in public, how stupid and how courageous he speaks to people. Some other people are not happy on how another member of parliament close to the president is actually, and his tribesmate and his friend, is abusing the people openly in the country. To him, it is strength because those are his close allies. But to the people, that's... Now, what you've said about their track record of their performance is acceptable because, in fact, the president has been known as the most lying president. But do you know what this president always do when it comes to about their performance? They will tell you.
Are you there? Brother Pigeon, are you sleeping?
Can you hear me?
No.
Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Now,
we
yes.
can.
Now I'm saying what this president will do in terms of their performance, they'll not compare their performance with what they promised. They'll compare their performance with what their predecessor did. So they'll tell you, if those people stayed for 10 years and they never did this, me, I came in, I built for you 1,000 houses. If those people came in those years, they never did it. Me, I came, I did this. So they always run away from what they promised to compare what they delivered with the former person. That's what always how they run away. You see? So sometimes catching them in terms of what they promised, they will run away to in terms of what they have performed vis-a-vis what other predecessors performed. You see? And they'll give you reasons. You know, these people will have a sweet reason to counter that. They'll tell you, oh, you see, yes, I'd promised this, but when you got in, imagine this. They can create false narrative. Imagine this was like this. Imagine this was like this. Imagine this was like this. So out of all that hardship, I have tried, like now, when the opposition joined him, he has been trying now to claim himself. So he has built affordable housing, around 100,000 of them in the country. He'll tell you, ever since independence, the only plan for affordable housing was built by a white man. In 60 years, I've managed to deliver 100,000 houses to people, and they're living inside. So this is how they will be smart about the false promises, vis-a-vis comparing their performance with the predecessors. And to be sure, you'll find that the current president performed better than the former one in another way, but not as per the current context. Because, for example, if in this current context, today you are capable of performing better than the other person, that's always natural. Your kid is capable of learning higher than where you learned in the last time because of the challenges you're facing. So by your kid saying that, no, you see, I've performed better because I went to the university and my dad only ended at high school, that's not a proper comparison to give forth. But now they'll give it for any purpose to convince the public. But yeah, Sister Tapua, come in as we are bringing this to an end.
I'll pass, thank you.
Okay, so what I was saying, there were three elements. One, we need to check on the weakness of the despot, their strength, and the tactics they use. And then one thing you have to take away is that we don't fight them on their strongest. You attack the weaknesses. What you learn is the tactic, but attack the weakness using the tactic and be cognizant of their strength. Because if you forget and if you underrate their strength, you might not be able to succeed. If you don't understand their tactics properly, you might not also be able to exploit the weakness properly. So the weaknesses is the point of success. But that weaknesses must be cognizant of the danger you are facing in terms of their strength, and must also be accompanied by the tactics that they use so that you can counter the tactics. In the tactics, you can also learn how to create the tactics. For example, as you're saying, here you say that the despots in every effort co-op leaders from trade unions. So they have association student leaders, they have ethnic groups in them. If you are trying to outsmart that leader, you must also go a long way to bring the trade unions on your side. Even if they're few, you must be able to bring the student union on your side. Even if they're few, you must be able also to incorporate those tribal bases, even if they're few, but you must try to cooperate so that you appear unifying as they also appear unifying. But you must be cognizant that now you use this few in order to counter the majority who are lied to, the majority who are just blind followers. The few you get from the trade union, the few you get from the student union, the few you get from the tribal grouping cannot be the puppet. They must be, the people must be conscientized so that themselves with the people can then take the light against the majority who are lost. In that way, they can be able to win some of their people who are lost in their side to cross over. Because this is the struggle of every side now trying to win their person. That's all about the revolution. If you win more negative forces to jump to the positive side, then you outdo them. You bring them down a bit so that you can be up. Of course, it's very clear that there can never be any time where there will be no negative action, where they can never be any time, even where Traore is existing today, it's not everybody who like him, irrespective of how good he's doing it. But at least when you win the majority, you have the ability to move forward. That's what I can say. Bring this to an
end. Thank you very much. Very exciting.
This has
Use
been
the
intense.
use the tactics of the despot in inverse.
Sawindok, this has been educating even to me, even as I was trying to share some of these thoughts. It's not that I've known them, but I think it even now, it's like I retrospect, I speak to myself again. Because when I'm learning these and I'm trying to speak, there's also how I get to learn to myself. And it opens another Pandora on how we look at things. Because I think if we go deep analytically, we can be able to get the majority. Because actually, we need to be the touch of the society. This Pan-African struggle we are having today, many people do not spend their time to read it, to understand it and study it. And that's why many people are against studying it. Many people say, oh, you just go there to go and read. But the question is, if you don't study it, if you don't read it, how do you understand it? So if you don't take time to critically analyze it, research it, read it, study the process, how do you understand it? Some people say, yes, we are ready to revolution. We are going to remove this. Hey, this Africa must unite. Oh, Africa must be liberated. The question is, what do you understand? What is that unity to you? How does it look like? Have you taken your time to understand the process, to study it, to know what that unity looks like? Because that is the problem you're having. Majority of us are not ready to take the long route of studying a problem. And then they took the time to study us until they came with a curriculum or a program called education to make us be like them so that we can forget ourselves. Then before we decolonize our mind, before we decode the system by going through the reversal of removing the indoctrination that were put in us, we are saying we are ready to fight. And that's why there have been many coups, people call them revolutions, but there are few that stand out to be counted as perfect ones. And if you can say, for example, the Burkina Faso one, you can say some few, those are people who not only went to change the system, but they understood, studied, and knew what was to be done. And therefore, even when they go there, they are convicted, committed, and ready to give it all because they know what they stand for. But others who come in without that serious commitment of understanding end up giving good promises. Like we'll be observing, you have already observed Ruto who has failed. We'll be observing the president of Namibia on what will happen, and they will speak. But you know what? One thing you can never lie on is your character. It will follow you. Even if you're a thief and you go to church and you pretend to be preaching every day because you're living with a pastor, one day you'll just steal something. You'll even steal a sacrament. It will just follow you.
Hey, you will even steal the Bible from the pastor.
It will. So if these people are speaking because it's a popular narrative today in the continent, let's just study them slowly. Because if they don't really know what they stand for, they'll expose themselves the same way Ruto started exposing themselves until people who thought he was revolutionary said, really, this was not a revolution. This was not a revolutionary either. You can never hide a character. You can never. You can try to pretend, but over a period of time, it will come out. And therefore, I believe that, Sister Tapua, we need to carry it forward to people. The problem is that people want to be the revolutionary forces, are not ready to commit themselves to go through the process of learning and understanding. Like, for example, everybody want to be, yes, I want to change. But are you ready to understand and study the process? Understanding is not meaning that join the government, so learn the government inside, then you remove it from inside. Because how do you join a rotten government and learn the rotten government, then change the rotten government? Some people give me that narrative. They tell me, oh, get in the system, maybe get elected from maybe a constituency member, learn the process, and then one day you'll remove it. Any rotten process or any rotten system can never give you a template of replacing it. Unless you learn a template that should work, then you can go there and change it to a template you want. But if you go to a rotten template, you are using a rotten book, a rotten text, then you're saying you want to change that rotten. Where did you learn this thing that you want to change it from? Where did you learn it? Where did you learn this template that is good when you have been in the system that is wrong over a period of time? The only thing it does well is that it corrupts you, it consumes you, and then you start becoming guilty. You can no longer have any audacity, any integrity even to stand to oppose the system. So you get inside, After one term of being a member of parliament, you're already a thief. You've looted something. Then the next day, when now you're supposed to condemn the president, you not stand to condemn it. Because you know, the president knows that you stole something from somewhere. The president knows that you have some scandal somewhere. They keep you on check. And that's why, as Sir Windhoek has said, as we conclude this, anybody who has been part of the system has been actually been taken through the initiation of the birth of the system. They have some doubts and doubts in them. And no matter how they come out to pretend that they want to change the system, they'll never change it because the system knows them and the system has them on check. They'll only replace the system to be the same system, but not to the new system. That's what I'd like to say as we bring this on them. So thank you very much for your time today. We are few, but it's been intense. Yeah.
General Anunnaki, give thanks.
General Inaki has refused to speak. So Sister Tapua will pick it from there in the next class as we try to study still the base, what you call the base support for the despotic regime. Then once we finish that is when we'll go to the next thing. So let's pick it from there. But I think what Sir Windhoek said is that we try to concentrate on a few paragraphs as much as we went overboard a bit, but I think it also made us to crystallize this into context properly. I know we've spoken out of the context a bit, but it was not purely out. It was either just trying to give references to, trying to give life to this document in the contemporary setup. So thank you all. If there was any misunderstanding, any whatever, we are not perfect. In this class, we only say that we allow you to share your thinking. And nobody has the right to criticize your thinking if you are thinking. So let's meet again next week.
Thank you. Good night. Bye.
Good night. Bye. Sir Windhoek, thank you for putting me on the hot seat today.